Hi, I'm Ernest from MVP Equity Group. So a lot of times when people buy real estate, they have a tendency to focus on the price. And while it's totally understandable to look at the price, it may not be the very first thing that you should actually look at. And what I'm trying to relay to you here is that if you're trying to buy commercial real estate properties, you want to make sure that that property actually cash flows. So we're not trying to, buy real estate to see if the value goes up and down and then turning around and sell it, because if we do end up selling it, we're going to have to pay a lot of taxes on it, right? And so the whole point of buying commercial real estate property is to avoid paying a lot of taxes. So when I first started investing in our very first commercial property within our investors, I started out with just my own money. Eventually I ran out of money and I couldn't buy that third or fourth piece of property as easily as I did my first and second. So maybe like a lot of you, where you use your own money, maybe to buy that one piece of property, then you use, your money again to buy that second piece of property. Well, eventually you're going to run out of money, right? So you're going to have to learn how to raise money, or another term out in the industry is called raising equity. So in this video, I will also help you to understand how to raise capital or equity. But before I continue, if you're interested in this kind of information, especially commercial real estate investing, please hit that subscribe button below. It helps with the algorithm of my channel, and it also allows me to create more content like this, especially in commercial real estate, so that I can continue to provide value for you as well. So when you acquire a piece of commercial real estate property and you want to raise capital for that property, you see potential investors are going to invest in you first. Then they're going to invest in the deal, and then they're going to invest in your management team. They want to know who you are. They want to know what your track record is. They want to know what kind of team that you've put together. But more importantly, what investors really want to know is, does this deal cash flow? Does it cash flow, or are you trying to time the market? You see, most deals that I've seen, or that we've seen as a team, is that they're trying to time the market. That's why if you learn this information that I'm about to go over with you today, you're going to have a huge competitive advantage over other investors out there. If you can understand how to put people's money to work, generate massive income, create massive value, and then give it back to your investors tax-free, you're going to always have investors. So that's what I'm going to try to teach you. So some of the things that I'm going to go through are some of the basics that you're going to need to review for every single deal that you go through. So with every single deal, it's going to have at least 4 components. And the first one is going to be very simple: income. Okay. So when you go to work, every 2 weeks, you're going to receive a paycheck, right? That's your income. So income for me will be through, my renters. It's going to be through my W-2 income as well. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to grow income. So the properties that I buy, I'm looking for properties that have problems. I'm looking for properties that have low occupancy. I'm looking for properties that have income potential. So for us, for income, we're looking for ways of how to monetize, pets. We're looking for ways to monetize giving our renters better views. We're looking for ways to put washer and dryers into these units. We're looking for ways to monetize those types of things. So those are other ways of generating income. Another way is to put carports, because people love their cars, right? So having covered parking or garages, these are all ways to monetize your income through real estate. And for me, it's been through single family homes as well as multifamily investing as well. So there are many different ways to generate cash flow. Most people really don't understand this part. So what they do is that they try to buy a property, right? And let's say that it's at 95% occupied. They're going to try to grow it to 97 or 98% occupancy. Well, that's not realistic. You can't grow your occupancy beyond what the market actually is doing or dictating. The income is a very important piece, and we spend a lot of time working on that income part. We work on, of course, occupancy side, and we also work on other income generating areas as well. So the second piece is called expenses, and that's negative, right? So obviously expenses are everything from payroll to marketing to advertising. It would be your taxes and insurance and all those utilities. Again, think about your situation. You probably have a mortgage. You might have to pay rent or a car payment. You might have some vacation plans that you want to do, or buying food. or you maybe have some pets. Those are all expenses. So the same thing applies here to commercial real estate, except for us, I have to pay utility bills. I have to pay the electric company for all the light bills. I have to pay the water company for all the water that the tenants are using. I have to pay trash bills because people, will have to come and pick up the trash at least a couple of times a week. So these are all the type of expenses with every single rental, commercial building, and industrial building. So that's what expenses are, okay? Taxes, insurance, all those things that I've already mentioned. But all those things happen in this line item right here, right? So, and what we're trying to do is to minimize as much of our expenses as possible. You're not going to get away with minimizing it to zero, of course, because every property is going to have expenses. So what we're trying to do, however, is to figure out ways to minimize our expenses as possible. In other words, if you have a trash vehicle coming to your property at least 3 times a week, can they come by 2 times a week, to pick up a bigger dumpster? That would be one less trip for them to come out. So that's one less trip charge that we don't have to pay, right? So those are the kind of things that you're going to start to get into when you start buying commercial real estate. Same thing applies with marketing and advertising, right? Since everything now is on the internet, these companies are going to now try to charge you for posting your ads like Facebook ads, right? Same kind of thing. So for our company, what we're trying to do is to minimize much of our marketing expenses, but to keep traffic to our properties very high. So we've been mainly doing this through blogging, YouTube, LinkedIn, to get people to come to our website through that funnel, if you will, right? These are all the kinds of things that you're going to look at on the expenses side. So the next thing that you're going to need to understand is a term called NOI, or net operating income, right? All NOI is your expenses minus your income. And how much money do you have left over after expenses, right? So now for many of you, that's going to be 0 or negative. So if you don't have a job, your expenses, of course, are going to be higher than your income. That probably applies to maybe some of you. But if you do have a job, hopefully your income is going to be higher than your expenses. So the same thing, with apartment investing. If you have expenses of $100,000 a month and my income is $20,000 a month, well, my income for the month, or my net operating income, is going to be $20,000 a month. But if my occupancy drops down to $90,000 and my expenses are $100,000, then I have a negative net operating income. So that's why managing expenses and managing income is very, very important. Because if you don't take care of these things, your NOI will go up or down drastically, right? And what you'll find, which is essentially what we'll be discussing for the rest of this video, is that your net operating income is the way to drive value for your properties. And this is what we call creating massive wealth for your investors as well as for yourself. Now, if you can understand how to generate high net operating income, then you're going to do very, very well in this business. Like I said, most people buy commercial real estate property and they hope that it goes up. They don't understand investing in commercial real estate at this level. And if you understand real estate at this level, you're going to do very, very well in commercial real estate. That's why I love commercial real estate. It's because, the numbers behind it, it's the analysis. I just love that part. So the next piece that we need to take into consideration is a thing called debt, right? Or mortgage. All right. So now again, let's say that it's a single family house that you're buying. Most people are going to go to the bank and get a loan to buy, that house. And this is what it is, debt, otherwise known as mortgage, right? So with big commercial real estate deals, same thing applies. We're using debt. Now, the cool part about debt is that it comes from other people. Now, if you think about this, for most of you, well, first, I want to thank you for putting all of your money in the bank, because now that the banks have to do what? They have to lend it, right? So when you put your money in the bank and people deposit their, checks into the bank, it's a liability to the bank. And the bank is sitting on a lot of people's money, and they have to pay you, interest, right? So the banks lend it to people like myself in the form of debt to buy bigger real estate deals. That's the way the banking system works. And that's why they give, people like yourselves, like us, free things to put your money into the bank, such as free checking deposits or no interest for X amount of months. They want your money because they want to lend it out at a much higher interest rate. They give it to you for, maybe 1% on your account, and then they charge me 5 or 6% to borrow it. That's how banks make money. So debt is very, very important component in buying commercial real estate, because it's really OPM, or other people's money, right? If you can use debt, then you can actually create massive wealth. Another really important piece of debt is that you've probably heard of leverage, even when you're buying, your home. Let's say that you're buying a home that's $100,000 and the bank gives you $70,000 on that loan. You only have to come up with $30,000, right, to buy a $100,000 house. The rest is in the form of debt. They've given you 70% of the amount to buy that house, or $70,000 of $100,000 is 70%. That's called loan to value, or LTV. So the debt is a very important piece or component, because you don't have to come up with the whole down payment or buy the house all in cash. So the cost of debt is very, very important. Banks can give you, this money if you qualify, of course. So why wouldn't you put $30,000 down to buy a $100,000 house? This is all that I'm doing, but on a much, much, much larger scale in commercial real estate properties that we own. So obviously we're heavy in debt, and I'm personally excited about being in debt because I have tenants here that are actually paying off my assets. The last piece after debt is called cash flow, right? Cash flow. And every single deal I look at goes through this exact same process, right? So if there's no cash flow, it could be that my, debt cost is too high. It could be that my expenses are too high, or it could be that my income is going to be too low. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad deal, because I might be buying something that has a 50% occupancy or has, low income. It has a negative net operating income, but if I can increase the income over 1, 2, or 3 years down the road, then I can generate a higher net operating income and cash flow. So I'm constantly looking at how much I have to put down in the form of equity. How much can I get into debt, and how much cash flow can I generate, right? Because as I'm investing other people's money and investing my money, this is the thing that matters to me the most is going to be cash flow, nothing else. I'm not looking at how much the property is worth in 1, 2, or 3 years down the road. Of course, I want to make sure that the value of that property goes up by generating a good net operating income. Because, when you go to the bank to borrow money, this net operating income is what the banks are going to be looking at. And so should you as well. So, they're saying, okay, if I'm going to give this person debt or a mortgage, I want to make sure the NOI is going to be higher than the debt. Because if my net operating income is not higher than my debt, I'm not going to be able to pay my debt, right? So my NOI has to be really in a good position to be able to maximize, your debt and to maximize your overall cash flow, right? So every single commercial real estate deal that we do goes through this kind of analysis, right? And once you understand, this concept, you could be massively wealthy. It's a way different way of buying things high and low and then trying to sell it. Investors don't look at things like this. What we're trying to do is we're trying to invest for the long term. What I want to do is to create cash flow massively into what we would call infinite return, right? So that's how I take people's money, generate, cash flow, value by managing their properties, and then giving it back in the form of, good debt. And every single year, that's what we try to do, is to pay out quarterly and yearly dividends. When we get investors, we want to invest, and we want to have them invest with us and again, so that we can continue to generate massive cash flow for them, return their equity back to them tax-free, and then continue to invest in our deals and create an infinite return. Thank you.